Welcome to Looking Within, a podcast to help you quiet your mind, settle your body, and see God's presence in your everyday life. I'm Julie. I hope our time together will help you to feel more grounded, whole, and filled with a growing desire to be a conduit of God's love and presence to the world around you. Now, let's begin. We are now far enough into the new year to no longer merely speculate about 2021. We've already experienced enough to tell us that this will be a difficult year with COVID-19 and the political and civil unrest. The question we posed 3 weeks ago is even more relevant. How should we live in these difficult days ahead? In scarcity and fear, or in abundance and love? Last week, Charles and I told the story of the two wolves. This week, we consider the question posed at the end of the story. Which wolf will we feed?
I'm enjoying this timely discussion about not merely surviving, but thriving, especially as we consider all that we face this new year. Julie, please remind us of the story you shared last week.
It is the story of the two wolves. An old Cherokee teaches his grandson about life. He points to his heart and says two wolves are fighting inside, one evil, one good. The old man says that these two wolves are in everyone. Thinking about this for a while, the grandson asks, "Which wolf will win?" The old man answers, "The one you feed." So today, let's talk about which one we feed.
Before we get to that, we may need to back up a little and ask the question some people may be thinking. The story about the two wolves is interesting and maybe even makes sense, but I don't recall reading about the two wolves in the Bible. And you're right, there is no story about the two wolves in the Bible. But if we look at the essentials of this story, we find them at the heart of the Christian message.
We all have two voices inside of us, one that flows from scarcity and fear, which then moves us into all kinds of mean-spirited behavior. The other flows from abundance and love, which then moves us into all kinds of acts of service, love, and grace. If we stand back just a little, we can become aware of both voices. We can be that watcher that we talked about last week.
Remember Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. There was a fierce battle going on inside his heart. Two wolves were fighting. We read that he prayed with such intensity that great drops of blood fell from his brow. One voice inside of him did not want to die. This is natural. This is the voice of the small self. What do I want? What's best for me? The voice of scarcity and fear. We all know this voice.
But there is another voice for Jesus there in the Garden of Gethsemane, a voice of abundance and love, the voice of the Father that willingly faces death. Jesus touches that voice when he says, "Not my will, but yours be done." There are definitely two wolves here fighting, and there is definitely a watcher who can stand back and see this battle and make a choice. Jesus chooses the voice of abundance and love. Jesus chooses to feed this wolf, and we know the outcome of that choice. So now, what's this like for you? How do you live out the story of the two wolves? Like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, are you aware of the fighting going on? Which one do you feed?
May I share with you what I have learned about my two wolves over the past few months? Since receiving a diagnosis of cancer last May, the wolves have been very noisy. One part of me is frightened. I don't want this cancer. I had other plans for retirement. The other part of me knows that I am called to follow Jesus, wherever the path may take. I find that I don't have to do much for the first wolf, that frightened voice of scarcity. If I do nothing, he's just fine and carries on with great vigor, really noisy. He fills me with fear, self-righteous anger, and entitlement. But it is the other wolf, the other voice, that I need to feed, to awaken. I've built my daily schedule around the activities that the good wolf needs to stay strong. Things like the support of friends, Bible reading, prayer, exercise, sleep, time with my cello, meditation, and service to others. I'll talk about these at another time. I just want you to know that my whole daily schedule has this one end in mind, feeding the good wolf. But there is one practice that has become the keystone of all the rest. My morning walk before dawn. I've taken an hour walk each morning since I received this diagnosis. We read in the Bible that Jesus would go off and pray by himself before others would awake. I often wondered, why was that so important to him? But now I know. He was feeding the good wolf. And now I do the same. I talk about my feelings, my wants, my frightened self. This is that bad wolf. But as I walk and remember Bible passages I've memorized and other quotes of encouragement, my good wolf begins to awaken, stretch, and find new vigor for the day. And the bad wolf, with all of his fears and annoying logic about not being loved by God, that wolf goes off and leaves me alone for a while. It is in the solitude and silence of that morning walk that I'm most easily aware of the two wolves and how much my good wolf needs some feeding. I've learned how good this time is for me. Because of this time alone, I'm less stressed, less afraid, and more enlivened, more connected to God. In short, I'm not merely surviving. That's what the bad wolf does. I'm thriving.
COVID-19 has brought a forced silence and solitude to all of us. We face the fierce battle inside of those two wolves. Not a pleasant thing. We hear the voice of fear, scarcity, and we question God's love. But if we follow Jesus, we learn that this is a time to feed the good wolf, to remind ourselves of God's presence and love, to banish, at least for a little while, the bad wolf, and to live in the glory of the good wolf. So we are called today to thrive. How do you feed your good wolf? Let's consider this during some quiet moments together. In this quiet space and time, I'd invite you to gently close your eyes and to take a few deep breaths in and out, in and out. Hear the sound of the bowl calling you to look within. Let it center you. Let it awaken you to God's presence. In this time of COVID-19, we are given the gift of increased solitude and silence. That makes it easier to pay attention to the two wolves inside all of us. As you pay attention to the two wolves, picture Jesus with you. What does he do? What does he say? We'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. Take one more minute to watch this time of silence. What is your takeaway? How will you build some intentionality in defeating your good wolf? I'd invite you now to take a few deep breaths in and out. In and out. Hear the bowl sound calling you back to this day. Gently open your eyes, remaining still for a moment longer. We live in challenging times. We have more silence and solitude than we are accustomed to. To no longer be distracted from this inner battle can be frightening for us. The howl of the bad wolf is strong. We are afraid to die. We want what we want. We feel that God has forgotten us.
But in this quiet time, following the example of Jesus each morning, we can quiet the bad wolf by feeding the good wolf, reminding ourselves of what we know and have experienced, God's unconditional love and presence.
If God is for us, who or what can be against us? Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Nothing. Live this week in the presence of the good wolf. Feed the good wolf. Thank you for making time for your inner self today, for developing and enriching your relationship with God through reflection and discovery. Whatever you've experienced, carry that with you in the coming days. You can find more episodes at our website, Gloria-Day, that's DEI.com/lookingwithinpodcast, or subscribe through your favorite podcast app. If you know someone who might enjoy and benefit from this podcast, share it with them. Your financial contributions make this ministry possible. To give, visit gloria-day.com/giving. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you next time.